Welcome to another episode of It Has to Be Said. I'm Rachel French, and I'll be the one to say it. Ladies, you need to loosen up and lighten up about your first date expectations. Seriously, who do you think you are? You're single. Have you thought that maybe you should reconsider how you're approaching first dates? There's a video that went around, it went viral a couple of months ago. I don't know if you saw it, but if you didn't, you missed out. So it's a video of a woman sitting in the passenger seat of a car. She'd just been picked up for a date, and the man had just pulled into a Cheesecake Factory parking lot. And this woman pulls out her phone and starts to go live with her followers, talking to them about how could this guy take her to Cheesecake Factory. And she says to him the equivalent of, "You don't take this to Cheesecake Factory." It is truly one of the most unbelievable things that you could hope to see in a video. She's too good for Cheesecake Factory. Now, by the way, if you've been there recently, you know it's expensive. So the fact that he wanted to take her there on a first date, not knowing who she was and really what she was all about, it's a little bit of a splurge, actually. We figured out, watching the video, who she was within just a few seconds, and she's not worth Cheesecake Factory. He should have taken her to Burger King. Seriously. It was unbelievable. She gave him such a hard time, and then he pointed out to her, "You made me wait for an hour, you weren't even ready, and you wouldn't let me come into your house." And she said, "Well, it wouldn't have been safe." So he had to wait outside for her to get ready for an hour, and then she was mad because you don't take this to Cheesecake Factory. Really, the audacity. So, I'm a woman of a certain age who's also single, and I've seen the memes go around. And one of the things that I've seen go around a lot is this list. I've got it in front of me. It was published on Fox 8. I don't know where Fox 8 is, but published on a Fox channel, of 28 places women refuse to go on a first date. Okay, I wasn't going to read the list because reading is kind of stupid in a live, but it's not that long a list, and I want you to hear these places that women say they won't go on a date. Number 1, Cheesecake Factory. Number 2, Applebee's, then Chili's, Chipotle, Olive Garden, the movies, your house. Actually, I won't go to your house on a first date either. Any fast food chain, Buffalo Wild Wings, Wingstop, Red Lobster, a buffet, IHOP, Denny's, the gym. By the way, I've been on a first date to Denny's. I've been on a first date to a lot of these places. The gym, church, Starbucks, coffee dates in general, ice cream dates in general, family functions, movie night, like Netflix, Hulu, again, same. Somewhere that requires a long drive, again, same, but that's a safety issue. Bowling, nightclubs, a hookah bar, a bar just to have a drink, Waffle House, or any sporting event. It does not specify whether that's playing or watching. This is the most fantastic list ever. Okay, now, let me say this. Some of these, they are a non-starter for safety reasons. So in this day and age, now if you're married and watching, maybe you don't know what I'm talking about, but many of us have first dates that are kind of more like meet and greets. I don't like to call them meet and greets because that kind of takes the romance and the hope and the fun out of it. I like to think of the first meeting as a date. If you talk to someone enough online, then you know that you want to meet them and suss out if there's any chemistry in person. So I like to think of them as dates, and I like them to be planned as dates, not extravagant, but with that hope and optimism, if that makes sense. So, wow, I just totally lost my train of thought. I'm going to have to edit this part out, obviously. There are places that I won't go for safety reasons, like a guy's house, and he can't come over to mine. I don't like to go on hikes because I don't know how to get out of the situation quickly and easily if things turn weird, and I don't want to get into his car. Other than that, I'm pretty open to mostly anything. But here's what happened today that was so interesting. So I took this graphic and I shared it in a group on Facebook full of single people locally. And I said, yeah, I won't do these 3 that make me feel unsafe, and I don't smoke hookah, but if that's where he wants to go, that's where I'll go. Because here's how I see things. Let me tell you how I see things. Before a man asks me out, I think it is my job to create a safe environment where he feels confident that if he asks me out, he won't be rejected. That's my job, to make him feel sure that he can ask me out. And then I say yes. And then it is his job to plan, and it is my job to be a grateful and respectful and enjoyable date. That means I get dressed up and try to look good, and I try to be pleasant, and I try to express gratitude and thanks for his planning and for taking me and for spending time with me. What I don't want is any man to regret having asked me out or spending the time with me. That's how I see my role. Now, maybe that's a little bit traditional, but anyway, that's just how I see it. I shared this list in this group, and I was seriously blown away by the responses of the women. Truly blown away. One woman who is also of a certain age and therefore, like me, maybe can't be super duper picky about every single teeny tiny little thing because the dating pool is not as large for us over 50 as it was at 25. But she says, yeah, I don't want to do these things because they're unsafe, and I don't want to do these things because you can't talk, and I don't want to do these things because they're weird, and also I prefer non-chains or not to eat on a first date. So I kind of couldn't let it go, and I said, what do you do then if a man asks you out and says, let's meet at Chili's? Do you just say, I don't want to go to Chili's, or do you say, I don't want to go out with you, or do you say, I don't want to eat? And she says, I just say that I would prefer not to eat. And I said, oh, okay, I thought that this was about chains. And she says to him, or she says to me, she said, I tell him I would prefer to talk without the distraction of eating. Or if he's insistent, I suggest a non-chain nearby. Look, we all prefer non-chains, but look, if he wants to go to a chain, we don't know the reason, that's fine. But this is the kicker. She says, realistically, I'm too much of a foodie and chef to get along long term with someone who doesn't have taste. Someone who's enthusiastic about Chili's probably wouldn't appreciate me making sous vide lamb. Oh, is that right? So a man who wants to go to Chili's or Applebee's or Cheesecake Factory on a first date before he even knows whether he wants to spend any quality time with you in an extended way whatsoever, you expect him to take you someplace, more interesting, fancier? You want him to take you someplace that costs more money or shows more planning? What exactly is the issue here? Because then I responded in the only way I could, which, in order to kind of keep the peace and not say what I really wanted to say, which is, man, you could make diamonds up your butt. That's what I wanted to say. But I said, oh, okay, haha, you've explained now. I guess I'm just not that high class. And she responds, it's really just a matter of preferences and compatibility. I can destroy taco truck tacos too. Well, then why didn't you just start with that? If you can destroy taco truck tacos, then what's so bad about Chili's? And I just want to ask, who do you think you are? Because you don't know why a man is inviting you to Chili's for the first time, or Applebee's or Cheesecake Factory. Maybe he just likes that place. Maybe he's always liked that place. And maybe he is also very sophisticated, but he doesn't know if you're worth the better date yet. Have you ever considered that? Maybe he's choosing a chain because there's a consistency of service and food there. He knows you know what Chili's is. He knows that you can look up the menu and pick something that you like. He knows it's going to be casual. Maybe he just feels like it's going to be a comfortable place for two relative strangers to meet. Did you think about that? Because I think that when you cut someone off based on their first date invitation, you are making a judgment about who they are. For example, she's making a judgment that he doesn't have good taste. Well, you know what? If he had invited you to go to a taco truck, would you assume he doesn't have good taste? No, you wouldn't. But if he invites you to go to Chili's, you would assume that. Maybe this is why we're single. Maybe we're making too many judgments too soon. Now, I was thinking about this date that I went on maybe 8 or 9 years ago. He asked me if there was a park near where I lived. And I thought that was strange, but it was a daytime date, and that's fine. And he was going to come to me. He was going to drive 10 or 12 miles, from another city in Orange County. And so, yeah, I picked a park, and we met at the park. And I wasn't super stoked about the fact that that was our date. We were going to meet at a park. But okay, that's what he planned. So my job is to be grateful that the man asked me out and made a plan, and for me to try to be pleasant and see what comes of it. The best part is this guy showed up with Del Taco double cheeseburgers, because he remembered that earlier in the week I had said that I had been to Del Taco countless times in my life, but I had never had a cheeseburger. So he brought cheeseburgers. And he'd also gone to the liquor store and bought a couple of, I don't remember what they were, maybe vodka or rum, I don't know, a couple nips. So we ate our cheeseburgers and had our drinks, and then we walked around the park, and I thought that was a great date. He didn't spend a lot of money, but he showed some thought and care. He proved that he had been listening to me. That was a good date. I don't assume that he doesn't have good taste. I don't assume that he doesn't have enough money to take me someplace else. I assumed that he wanted a casual setting to just feel things out and see if we were a good match. And by the way, we weren't a good match. Neither one of us really felt the chemistry, but I have nothing but good memories about that date. Another good date that I was thinking about today, again, I hadn't met him in person yet, so I think he actually went above and beyond here. We met this is when I lived in New England, and we met at a church that had been turned into a restaurant. And what made it special to me was he asked me if I wanted to have appetizers, and I said, that's up to you. And then we looked at the menu, and he said, these are the few that I think would be good. What do you think? Pick one of these three. And I did. And then we shared an appetizer, and that set the tone for the date, that we were going to be kind of physically intimate in that way, but not too intimate. And I love sharing food on dates, and I don't care if it's at a fast food restaurant. I've actually met a man at a McDonald's once before. No kidding. There was a weird story behind that, but it's not worth telling now. Maybe some other time. But then we each ordered our own plates, and then he did the thing that I love, which is he asked me if I wanted to try his food. Of course. And I asked him if he wanted to try my food. Again, there was this sharing. And yes, it wasn't at a chain restaurant, but I love when that happens at a Chili's or an Applebee's too. It's not a big deal where you meet. It's what happens while you're on the date. I just think that maybe we're taking ourselves a little bit too seriously. And I think part of the problem is that we've seen these movies our whole lives where women hit 30, I guess, and when they go out on dates, it's all very sophisticated. The man wears a sports jacket, and the woman puts on a little black dress. And what you're finding out now, girls, is that that's not really what dating looks like, especially when the first date isn't necessarily a date, but you're feeling each other out. Now, I'm not a big fan of coffee dates because I think it feels like a networking one-on-one. I think it feels like an interview. I don't really like them. The mood it's not really that conducive to connecting on any kind of intimate level whatsoever. Personally, I've never had a coffee date turn into a second date. I have, however, met someone for coffee at a little breakfast place where once we met, he said, let's order breakfast. He wanted to see if I was really the girl in the pictures. He wanted to see if there was any chemistry at first. So we ordered the coffee, and then we ordered the food. I think that's absolutely reasonable. I don't expect men to make reservations for our first meeting and wear a sports jacket and for me to wear a little black dress. I don't expect that. And so I think a lot of women are really disappointed that this isn't what dating looks like. Well, that's too bad. It is what it is. Gentlemen, though, there's something for you here. You should make a plan, but if the girl doesn't like it, you can be flexible if you want, or too bad, so sad for her. The only thing you need to do is be courteous and ask. And if you want to give a woman choices, give a woman choices. What I'm seeing a lot, though, and I'm seeing this with women of all ages and at all points on the hotness scale of 1 to 10, is that the women are, first of all, being very judgmental about what the men are planning, but also they're not even giving the man a chance to plan. They're recommending places. They're telling them when they're free and where they'd like to meet. And they're taking all of that man energy and they're taking it on themselves. And then they're surprised when it doesn't turn into a second date. And I realize that this is the way the society is going, but I feel that when we kind of lean into our traditional roles, and I have to practice this because I spend a lot of time maybe letting my masculine energy sort of take over as a defense mechanism, as a way to let the man know that, that he doesn't have to take care of me or whatever. But that has not yielded the most pleasant experiences. It has not yielded the most second dates. It has not yielded the most friendships when the chemistry wasn't there. What has yielded the best results across the board is when the man acts like the man and I act like the woman. And that includes not being judgy about where we meet. I can tell you, I have met men at almost all of those different places, and it has absolutely nothing to do with how the date goes. Absolutely nothing. I've met someone at Dave & Buster's. Like I said, I've met someone at McDonald's. I have met someone to go for a walk. I've met men in all different scenarios. The most important aspect is how you treat each other and how open you are. So, all I'm really trying to say is, ladies, get over yourselves. Men, maybe be a little more thoughtful about the kinds of dates and first meetings that you plan. Don't plan things that feel like job interviews, because then they will end up acting like job interviews, and you don't want that, and she doesn't want that either. I recommend, gentlemen, unless the woman really wants to do something active, plan something where she can get cute. Because when a girl feels cute or feels pretty, she's actually the best version of herself, and she's willing to take in your compliments. She's willing to take in your attraction for her. That can be hard for some girls. Like if you wanted to meet and go rock climbing, or you wanted to, I don't know, golf, play basketball. I don't know what it is people do on first dates that are activities, because I don't like that. I would go, but it wouldn't be the best for me. I like to feel like I'm looking my best and that we have a chance to actually talk and look at each other. But I can say this, I do a lot of things wrong, clearly. I'm single, and I don't want to be, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. Obviously, I'm not very good at this, but one thing I know for sure is that I don't need to be a big old bee about where a man invites me to meet him for the very first time. And I'm shocked, truly shocked, at the way the women responded to that list. These are women who also want to not be single. These are women who are constantly complaining that there are no good men. These are women who are constantly complaining that men expect to get laid on the first date. And then out of a list of 28, you see someone who is not taking care of herself physically, who is not in a good position financially, saying there are only 3 of those 28 places I would meet a man for a first date. Who do you think you are? And why do you think you're single? We can all do better. Again, I don't speak from a position of authority, but I've got eyes, and I'm reading what these people are saying, and I'm hearing them, and I'm feeling their angst. And maybe if you would meet the dude at Chili's, maybe he would surprise you with sous vide lamb on the second date at his very nice home. But now you'll never know, will you? Now you'll never know. All right, that's it for this time. If you like what you heard today, or you think you might like what I have to say in the future as I get better at this and don't lose my train of thought and then have to spend a lot of time editing and cutting, then please follow me. You can find me on YouTube and Rumble if you want to watch the video versions of me. Also, the video version of me is on Spotify. And if you just want to hear me and don't want to look at me, you can also find me on iHeartRadio and Apple Podcasts. You can find me at It Has to Be Said and put Rachel French afterward. That's the most sure way to find me on all of those platforms. I would appreciate a follow, a rating, and downloads. They will help me be found by a new audience as I just get started and get more traction. So I appreciate your support, appreciate your sharing, and appreciate your downloading and following me on those platforms. It really means a lot. Thanks a lot.